The day I died at 78, peacefully in my sleep. My wife Willow refused to even see me one last time. I thought that would be our final goodbye, but when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back at 22, given a second chance at life. I made a decision. I would never get involved with Willow again. That was the plan. Until one day, I was having a great chat with a junior from our club, and out of nowhere, Willow appeared, her face cold and stormy. She snapped, "She's even younger than your granddaughter. How could you still go through with it?" I was speechless. Chapter 01. At 7:20 in the morning, I finished my jog. The other 3 guys in my dorm were already up. We had an 8 a.m. class today. Alex glanced at the time and exclaimed, "George, which girl did you fall for? You've been sticking to morning runs for 2 whole months." He wasn't wrong. I used to be the biggest sleeper in the room, but 2 months ago, I suddenly became a morning person. Shocking the other 3 in the dorm, grabbing my clothes to take a shower before class, I replied, "Running in the morning clears the mind." It wasn't that I didn't want to sleep. It's just that my 20-year-old body was now inhabited by a 78-year-old soul. Even my internal clock followed the habits of old age. I'd naturally wake around 6, so I figured, why not go jogging? Who would have thought, just 2 months ago? I was an old man, nearing the end of life, and then, after my final breath, I woke up young again. At first, I'd get sleepy embarrassingly early, so much so that I couldn't stay awake in night classes, but I eventually adjusted. Still, the early rising stuck with me, not that I minded. At 7:40, the 4 of us went to the first-floor canteen for breakfast. As I was sipping on my porridge, Alex elbowed me, nearly sending it straight up my nose. Lowering his voice, he whispered, "George, look, your goddess is getting breakfast too." The 3 of us followed his pointing finger in perfect unison, as synchronized as we'd been during military training. It was Willow. She wore a plain white hoodie with no extra frills, paired with slim-fitting blue jeans that showed off her long, straight legs, already blessed with stunning looks. Her simple outfit only made her more eye-catching. She stood in line, slowly scrolling on her phone with one hand, earphones in, sipping milk from a bottle in the other. I pressed my lips together and turned away, correcting Alex. "She's not my goddess anymore, honestly. I feel more like her grandfather now." David looked stunned. "George, why are you throwing shade?" I sighed. Honestly, I wasn't. When I passed away, both our grandkids were older than she is now, thanks to her family's strong genes. Even our granddaughter looked a little like her. So now, seeing 20-year-old Willow again, all I could think of was my little granddaughter. Yes, Willow and I were married. A business marriage, on the surface cordial. But in reality, we couldn't stand each other. Spent our whole lives arguing. Of course, I never won a single fight. She was a nagging shrew. And honestly, the fact that she even had a husband just proves how tolerant I used to be. The one time I did win an argument was when I cursed myself, saying I'd probably die before her, just to finally escape, usually quick with comebacks. She stared at me, eyes wide, speechless for once. Then her eyes turned red and she stormed back to her room. She wasn't as ruthless as I was, couldn't bring herself to curse her own life. Ironically, I really did die first. Willow and I had a son and a daughter. And 3 grandchildren, 2 boys, 1 girl, all grown. They were all there at my deathbed. Everyone, except Willow. She didn't even come to see me one last time, after over 50 years of marriage. She wouldn't give me that. No idea how she's doing now. Don't care anymore. Back when I first returned to this life, I went to secretly check on the young Willow. Of course, she didn't recognize me. When we passed by each other, she didn't spare me a single glance, even though I'd spent my entire college life crushing on her. I'd been so timid that she never knew I existed. Pathetic. Really. Shit. She's looking over here. Alex blurted out. I groaned. "Alex, I told you to stop swearing. Damn it." I couldn't help it either. It had been years since I swore. But somehow, facing Willow again made it feel natural. What's her deal? She looked like she'd been rooted to the spot. Frozen as she stared in our direction. Were her eyes red? David muttered. "Why do I feel like she's about to cry?" Her gaze met mine. And for a moment, my heart gave an involuntary tremble. I felt it too, what David said. But seriously, what was there to cry about? She's the queen bee on campus. This isn't the place for tears. Luis chimed in. Whether she cries or not, I don't know. He handed David a tissue and grabbed one for himself. But I do know if we don't head to class now, we're gonna be the ones crying. Alex groaned. Damn this cursed 8 a.m. class. I looked away and quickly gathered my stuff, rushing off to class with the others, not letting myself think about it too much. Chapter 02. Good thing I was reborn back to my university days. Years of managing my family's company had already carved business instincts into my bones, which made handling the academic knowledge at college a piece of cake. If I had been reborn back to high school, well, then there probably wouldn't be much of a story to tell. After finishing the first 2 periods of statistics, a few of us rushed to the lecture hall for our class on Maoist theory. We picked seats in the 3rd row by the windows. It made it easier to sprint to the cafeteria right after class. The windows to the right faced the campus walkway, where rows of plane trees stood, their leaves already tinged yellow. It was a shared general education class with 3 different majors, and even by the time the bell rang, the classroom was still half empty and scattered with students. Alex suddenly seemed to remember the topic we'd been talking about at lunch. He leaned closer and asked, "So why don't you like Willow anymore?" His question pulled my gaze back from the scenery outside. I remembered it had also been Alex who asked me before, "What do you even like about Willow?" I heard a ton of guys got rejected by her so hard they started questioning their self-worth. What did I say back then? Oh right, I picked a reason that was simple and honest. She's pretty. Alex had choked at that and said, "Being pretty doesn't fill your stomach." And I replied, "No, but it definitely makes everything else more appetizing. So why don't I like Willow anymore?" Alex pressed, "You think she's not pretty anymore?" That's not it. Even though our marriage was far from perfect, I had to admit, at every stage of her life, Willow was always objectively beautiful. But when I thought about how tangled our previous lives had been, I couldn't help but wonder, now that I'm 20 again and seeing Willow from the start, if maybe this time, we'd both be better off not getting involved in each other's lives at all. After a few seconds of reflection, I replied, "She's got a heart sealed in concrete." I cut my losses while I still could. There was no white moonlight, no unfinished love story, no cheating involved. It was just that Willow didn't do romance. Her heart was harder than diamond and colder than a glacier. Unbreakable, unmeltable. Alex burst out laughing. "Bro, did you really just say, sealed in concrete?" The class bell rang, and a group of students walked in right on cue. I looked up casually toward the door. It wasn't hard to spot Willow's slender figure. Her gaze skimmed through the rows of seats, finally locking eyes with mine. But in the next moment, her roommate tugged her by the arm, and they walked toward the back of the classroom. I tilted my head slightly to watch her retreating figure. She slipped her hand out of her roommate's grip, then slowly crossed both hands behind her back, still holding her textbook. That oddly mature posture on such a young woman, what the hell? For a split second, it felt like elderly Willow had possessed her 20-year-old self. The professor had already started the lecture. I turned back and refocused on class. During the break, I picked up my thermos, opened the lid, blew on it a couple times, and took small sips. I'd bought this thermos a while ago, and the guys in the dorm had joked about it. What kind of college student carries a thermos everywhere? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone approach my seat, casting a shadow over me. I looked up, and startled, choked down a huge gulp of hot water that burned my tongue, trying my best not to stick my tongue out like an idiot to cool it off. I looked at the person in front of me with a mix of blame and confusion. I had no idea why Willow was standing there, staring at me. In our last life, we didn't even speak once during our entire college years. My tongue was already going numb, but I still managed to ask, "Can I help you?" A flicker of disappointment flashed in Willow's eyes before she quickly masked it. She looked down, pulled something from her pocket, and placed it on my textbook. "Your meal card. You dropped it," she said. Our school's meal cards all had personal info and photos. I must have been rushing this morning and dropped it without noticing. I thanked her, but she didn't leave. It felt like she was waiting for something. I shot her a look that said, "Anything else, classmate?" Willow pressed her lips together, then silently turned and walked away. David leaned in and said, "Damn, George, you really don't like her anymore." That was cold, man. No flushed face, no skipped heartbeat. That wasn't the reaction of someone who'd just been approached by their goddess. "What do you mean cold?" I shot back. I was polite. I even thanked her. David was speechless. "Dude, that's really what you're focusing on?" I put the meal card away, then pressed my right palm over my heart, feeling the too fast rhythm of it thudding against my chest. No way I was truly unaffected. She was the person I had a crush on as a teenager, the same person I'd spent a lifetime with. Even if I'd gone back to being 20, for me, it had only been 2 months since we parted, but I'd already lived over 70 years. I'd weathered countless storms in the business world. There's no way a 20-year-old girl could read what I was really feeling. Chapter 03. Back then, unless I deliberately passed by the places Willow frequented, I basically never saw her outside of our shared classes. But now that I've let go of those thoughts, I seem to be running into her more often. This morning, I went to the covered track field as usual. A few students were already jogging on the rubber track. I placed my thermos in my usual spot, only to find a brand new thermos already there. Weird, honestly. if it weren't for the habit I developed after 30 of drinking hot water with goji berries. At 20, I should have been clutching iced drinks, not herbal tea. Shaking off the thought, I put on my Bluetooth earbuds and started my morning run. I hadn't even completed one lap when a flash of white passed me by. I looked closely. Wasn't that Willow? Back in college, I couldn't even count how many times I'd watched her from behind. I'd recognize that silhouette anywhere. But what's she doing running? Sure, Willow did eventually pick up jogging, but that was something we only got into after we got married. Shortly after the wedding, my parents stayed with us for a while. Every day, they dragged us up early to go jogging for our health. It was rough at first, but we both gradually fell in love with the rhythm of it. Even after my parents left, we kept up the habit. Of course, she always complained I ran too fast, and I'd complain she ran too slow. We only gave up jogging when we got too old for it, switched to slow-paced walks instead, always 2 meters apart. Now though, I guess she just couldn't sleep and went on a whim. I didn't think too much about it and continued with my laps. After 6 laps, I slowed down, slightly out of breath, and walked back to where I'd left my thermos. I opened the lid and waited for my breathing to settle before taking a sip. The owner of the other thermos returned too. My eyes followed her hand, fair and slender, all the way up to her face. I was speechless. We stared at each other without saying a word, both sizing each other up. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch slightly. Was Willow losing it? Where's her beloved iced Americano? When did she become a thermos girl too? I remembered when I started drinking hot water in my 30s. She'd scoffed at me like I was some kind of old man. I told her, when you end up bedridden, I'll live stream myself clubbing just to rub it in. She snorted and said, are you sure that's clubbing and not just a rat flailing around? But the next day, I saw she'd bought her own thermos. I couldn't help teasing her. Didn't you say it was lame? She just curled her lips and said, well, if I'm going to outlive you, this wellness stuff suddenly feels worth it. I had no words. Just thinking about that memory made my teeth itch with frustration. One part of me regretted never being able to win an argument in our entire lives, and the other part grabbed the thermos and walked away in a curve around her. It wasn't until I reached the dorms that something clicked. Walked around her. I think Willow had taken 2 steps toward me, and I, lost in thought, instinctively stepped aside and kept walking. What does it matter? So I sidestepped. Big deal. It was Thursday today. We only had 2 classes starting at 10 a.m. and the whole afternoon was left open for club activities. Back in freshman year, I had joined the sign language club, but after a few sessions, I lost interest and never went back. So I usually spent this free time in the library. Alex's photography club had planned a little outing to the park behind the school today, and he asked if I wanted to join. I figured I had nothing better to do, so I agreed. The fastest route to the park was to hike over the small hill behind campus. The hill wasn't tall, and the slope was gentle, with a winding path leading over it. In the end, the group decided to walk. When I saw Willow bringing up the rear of the group, I suddenly remembered, right, she's one of the club officers, and she's actually a really good photographer. I'd once found one of her old photo albums in our study, though she never took a single photo of me. Alex wasn't the most athletic, so we gradually fell behind and found ourselves at the back of the group. Alex, your shoelaces are loose again, I said. He was wearing new sneakers today, but the laces kept coming undone. It was already the second time. Ugh. So annoying, he grumbled. That's it. I'm tossing these shoes when I get home. Move. I'll show you how to tie it properly. I crouched down and quickly tied a sturdy loop knot for him. I'd had a pair of shoes just like this, and it was Willow, impatient as ever, who'd taught me this particular way to tie them. It had stuck with me ever since. When I stood up, Willow was right there beside me, her brows slightly furrowed as she looked at me. I couldn't tell what she was thinking. George, she said, can I add you on WeChat? That line, it was nearly identical to what she said the first time we met on a blind date. Back then, she asked almost mechanically, Mr. Wong, would it be okay if we exchanged WeChats? Only now, her expression was a bit different. There was something in her eyes, a flicker of emotion I couldn't quite understand. I gave a small smile and replied, sorry, not really convenient. Chapter 04. For the rest of the event, Willow wore a frosty expression, which made everyone too scared to go near her. But for me, that look, I knew it all too well. I'd seen it for over 50 years. What I couldn't figure out was, what the hell made her suddenly ask for my WeChat? George, you came too. A voice snapped me out of my thoughts. People were already off doing their own thing, and I looked toward the familiar face walking over, a face I hadn't seen in years. It was Anna, my junior from student council. She was a year younger than me and Willow. We went to the same high school and met during student council days. Later, she got into the same university, and we'd occasionally bump into each other on campus. After graduation, her father's company had business ties with Willow's, so she was one of the few mutual friends we stayed in contact with. I greeted her with a smile. What a coincidence. Junior. I came with my roommate. I pointed over to Alex, who was adjusting his camera lens in the distance. He's over there. Anna nodded, then suddenly asked, I'm short a model. Can you help me out, Senior? I remembered she never ended up getting married. I chuckled and said, Junior, you don't need a model, you need a boyfriend. Don't stay a single simp forever. Anna blinked, caught off guard. Where did that come from? She opened her mouth to say something, but was cut off by a sharp, icy voice from behind me. What now? She's even younger than your granddaughter. How could you still go through with it? Anna looked completely baffled. And me? I was speechless. I whipped around, and there was Willow. When did she get behind me? But the most terrifying part, what the hell kind of nonsense did she just say? She grabbed my arm and started dragging me toward a quieter spot. My brain kicked into overdrive as I followed her, trying to make sense of everything. Wait a minute, could this actually be old Willow? But I only came back to 20 because I died. She was still perfectly healthy. Did she die too? No way, she died just 2 months after me, right? But if she wasn't her older self, how could a 20-year-old Willow say things like that? Okay, forget it. My head hurts trying to figure this out. Once we were somewhere out of sight, Willow finally let go of my arm and got up in my face, clearly annoyed. That expression, I knew it well. She looked up and snapped, George, you're a damn pervert. I was speechless. That's your opener. Ever heard of manners? She went on. Anna is 19. Your granddaughter is 22. My eyes widened. Holy sh, it is old Willow. That cranky old lady actually came back too. And what kind of twisted nonsense is she even saying? I couldn't help but fire back. I'm 20. Okay. Willow sneered. Sure. Age 20. Mentally, more like 78. I had no words. Her mouth was still as savage as ever, just like in our last life. She gave a cold snort. So this is why you've been ignoring me. I get it now. You were supposed to be obsessed with me at this point in time, but you're already tired of me and looking for someone new. Huh? Hold up. I cut in, voice rising slightly to cover the sudden guilt I felt. When the hell was I ever obsessed with you? She rolled her eyes. Oh really? Then how come I found a box in your stuff after you died, with a candid graduation photo you pretended was a selfie with me, and a note on the back that said, 4th year of liking Willow? I was at a loss for words. Yeah. I really did that dumb thing. It was supposed to be my little memento of a crush that never went anywhere. Then I got sick, so suddenly I didn't even have time to destroy the photo. I ended up hospitalized right away. Later I thought, whatever. By the time anyone found out about it, I'd be long gone. No need to worry about being laughed at if you're dead, right? Who would have guessed that the story kept going even after death? Absolutely mortifying. I steadied my breath and tried to keep my voice calm. I was young and dumb. Everyone goes through some cringy phase. To keep her from roasting me more over that ancient history, I quickly switched the subject. Wait, how are you here too? Did you die? Some accident? Crap, if that's true, our poor family lost 2 people in just 2 months. Willow's eyes flickered at my question. That fiery, combative energy she had a moment ago vanished, and she suddenly looked quiet, almost like a nervous little quail. I knew that look. If Willow didn't want to talk about something, no amount of pressure would get her to open up. I frowned and changed tactics. Then how did you recognize me? That was clearly an easier question. She smirked and answered, your jogging habit, the thermos you carry everywhere, the way you tie your shoelaces, and that dumb sweet Anna girl. None of those things existed until after we got married. I had no words. Okay, she definitely remembered all the details. When did you arrive? I asked. Willow replied, the night before I ran into you at the cafeteria. I checked your class schedule that morning. Since that day, all of Willow's odd behavior replayed in my mind like a highlight reel. It wasn't that I hadn't noticed. It's just, I never imagined she could have come back just like I did. All I can say is, what a cosmic joke. Chapter 05. Ain't this just cosmic punishment? It's not like I expected to be the only one reborn, but did Willow really have to be sent back to the same timeline as me? Couldn't the universe assign her a different chapter of life or something? Just, not here, not now. Willow asked again for my WeChat, and I rejected her without hesitation. She didn't get it and kept pressing. Why not? I sighed, trying to explain seriously. Willow, didn't it ever occur to you that since we've both gotten a second chance at life, maybe we should make different choices this time? Like, choosing not to be part of each other's lives? Her body froze, and so did the expression on her face. I continued, we got married without any real feelings between us, and ended up fighting for a lifetime. Clearly, we weren't meant to be each other's partner. Maybe leaving each other behind will lead to better outcomes, for both of us, don't you think? I gave her a small nod and turned to leave, but before I could take a step, she grabbed the cuff of my sleeve. Willow looked at me. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and her voice came out soft and almost pleading. But when you liked me, I didn't even know you existed. Your feelings only lasted 4 years, and I never even got the chance to notice. After we got married, you just hated me." Her voice trailed off, more like a whisper now. "So love just turns into hate. It's all the same, isn't it?" She let go slowly. I stood there, heart aching, feet rooted in place like something invisible held me down. "Go ahead," she murmured, shoulders slumping. The girl who had always been so proud suddenly looked heartbreakingly fragile. I wanted to say something, anything, but I knew the more I said, the messier this would get. Maybe keeping things clean was the only way to truly cut ties. I stood there for a long moment, then finally turned and walked away. For quite some time after that, I didn't see Willow again. It was like she really listened, disappearing completely from my life. Though, surely she wouldn't skip even public classes, right? Girls really out here daring to fail courses like it's no big deal. I could only sigh helplessly. I guess we were really going our separate ways now. Time quietly slipped by, and on Christmas, our city saw its first snowfall. Soft, fluttering flakes fell through the sky, adding a romantic flair to the already festive evening. My roommates and I returned to campus after wandering outside for a bit. A thin layer of snow had already blanketed the campus path, crisscrossed by messy footprints. I couldn't help but recall a winter from after our marriage, one with much heavier snow. That year, our two families had dinner together. Since the restaurant wasn't far, Willow and I walked there. I've never had a good tolerance for alcohol, but the vibe was great that night and I overdid it a little. By the time dinner was over, I was leaning heavily on Willow just to stay upright, determined to prove I wasn't drunk. I shoved her away and insisted on walking in a straight line. 3 steps in, I twisted my ankle. Willow had no choice but to scowl and drag me home. It wasn't a long walk, but I leaned against her the whole way, savoring every second like it was a slow-motion scene from a film. On the left, busy shopfronts sparkled with neon lights. On the right, warm street lamps lit up the snow-covered road that led us home. She held me up, step by step, leaving 2 staggered trails of footprints in the snow. She smelled so good, I wanted to bury my face in the crook of her neck and fall asleep right there. She hissed through gritted teeth, "George, be human, please. I'm struggling here and you're freezing my arm with your face." Something cold melted against my cheek. I looked up. Snowflakes were drifting down from the sky. Ignoring her complaints, I murmured, "Willow, it's snowing." She snorted. "So maybe next time, don't drink. How many feet do you plan on spraining?" I laughed. "When the snow gets heavier, you'll turn into a little old granny, and I'd be an old man right next to her." We really did grow old together. Willow rolled her eyes. "At this pace, the snow won't even pile up before I drag you home." I had no words. Seriously, was this woman allergic to romance? Still, thinking back, it was like a wish fulfilled. Willow and I really did grow old side by side. Back at the dorms, we saw a crowd had gathered. Alex lit up and dragged us into the thick of it, excited to be front row for some drama. A chill ran down my spine. Oh no, I'd completely forgotten this was supposed to happen. In my past life, I once suffered through a public humiliation. A girl with a major crush on me had decided to confess in front of a crowd. If she'd just handed over a love letter, that'd be one thing. But no, she had to cry and guilt-trip me like I owed her something. I tried to leave, and out of nowhere, she lunged at me and yanked my pants down. Just remembering it made my scalp tingle. The crowd parted, and there it was, exactly like before. Heavy makeup, micro-mini skirt. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw me, and I had the overwhelming urge to curse out loud. She strode toward me with purpose. I quickly raised a hand to stop her from getting too close. Her smile froze, but she still bit her lip and said sweetly, "George, I really like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" The crowd started buzzing. My roommates noticed my stiff expression and jumped in to help. "What's with all the shouting? If you like her so much, why don't you date her?" they said, motioning to the onlookers. The girl's eyes were starting to tear up. She sobbed my name, "George." Just as I opened my mouth to reject her firmly, someone looped their arm around mine. I turned. It was Willow, dressed in a white puffer jacket. She didn't look like the distant, aloof beauty everyone saw her as. No, right now she looked like she wanted to tear this girl apart. She spat. "Go cry somewhere else. Don't bother him again." The girl shot back. "And who are you to tell me that?" Willow leaned against me and said, each word clear and cold, "I'm his girlfriend. We have a kid and a grandkid." The whole crowd went silent. People stared. What the hell just happened? Did she lose her mind? I froze, completely forgetting I was supposed to be angry. "Willow, do you even hear yourself? Are you seriously letting a high school level crush trigger you this hard?" I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. I tugged at Willow's hand, silently begging her to stop before she said anything worse. She spared me a glance, took a deep breath, and calmly added, "I mean, someday we will." The crowd collectively exhaled. False alarm. She was still sane. My roommates gave me a look full of meaning. I shook my head furiously. Nope, not what you're thinking. I'm normal. Please don't make this weird. Chapter 06. Honestly, I have no idea what kind of emotional crisis Willow went through. But ever since that night, she started showing up in front of me constantly. She couldn't get me on WeChat. No problem. Somehow she managed to get my phone number instead. She would text me all the time, not caring whether I replied or not, just chatting away on her own like she was having the time of her life. She also had my class schedule, so whenever she didn't have class herself, she'd show up to mine, plop down next to me, and stick around no matter how much I tried to shake her off. Eventually, I just gave up and let her do whatever. Let her act out. She'd get bored and back off eventually. Right. At least, that's what I told myself. My roommates, of course, kept shooting me that smug, "You're totally into this" look, no matter what I said. They treated every word like I was full of crap. So I stopped explaining, and just like that, I let it drag on for over half a month. Then finals came and went. We started winter break and packed up to head home for the Lunar New Year. Neither of us was from the city. The trip home took a 2.5-hour flight, followed by a half-hour bus ride. Willow had the same route as me, so, yep, we ended up traveling together again. I'd noticed how different she was from the Willow I once knew, but I still didn't understand why she'd suddenly gotten so clingy. Maybe she just didn't feel grounded in this reborn world. Maybe she needed something familiar. So on the bus, I turned to her, looked her straight in the eye, and said seriously, "Willow, we're really back. This isn't just my second life, it's yours too. You should go do the things you want, the things you need to do. You don't have to revolve around me." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Willow looked at me, those deep black eyes filled with confusion and frustration. "Don't you get it?" she said softly. "How obvious do I have to be before you realize I don't want to become strangers with you? I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it, even if we fight all the time like in our last life. I still don't want to let you go. I never let myself fall deeply for anyone, because..." I leaned forward, wanting to hear more. It was the first time Willow had ever opened up like this. For once, I felt like I was getting closer to the real her, the one who always hid deep inside. But in the very next second, a scream tore through the air. The entire bus jolted violently. Before I could even react, Willow threw herself over me. The bus tilted sharply, and luggage from the overhead racks rained down on us. Bags of all sizes crashing down. Some of them hit Willow directly. I heard her let out a muffled groan. Eventually, the chaos settled. The bus had stopped, but the noise inside hadn't. People were shouting, panicking. I opened my eyes and saw only darkness. A cold wave of panic hit me. I shouted her name as loud as I could. I knew she was right next to me, but I couldn't see anything. That scared me more than anything. My wrist was stinging, probably cut by broken glass. It felt wet and sticky. After what felt like forever, I finally felt movement against me. Her voice came, trembling. I'm okay." Hearing her speak nearly made my heart collapse. My voice was hoarse. "Are you sure? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," she said, breathing heavily. "Don't worry about me." I reached out in the dark, trying to find her face. My hand landed on the back of her head, and came away wet. "Willow," my whole body was shaking. "You're bleeding a lot." Outside, I could hear people shouting. From the bits and pieces I caught, it sounded like the road had collapsed under the bus, and half the vehicle had fallen into a sinkhole. We were sitting near the front, so we took the worst hit. "I really don't feel any pain," she whispered. "If you just hold me, I won't hurt at all." "Okay." I bit down hard on my lip, choking back my emotions, and held her tightly in my arms. I could feel her trembling. "Don't move, and don't fall asleep. Do you hear me?" I said. She answered quietly. My eyes stung. "Why are you so stupid? Why did you throw yourself over me?" Her voice was raspy as she said, "You dumb old man. If you died first again, what would I do?" Then, after a moment of silence, her voice came again, choked with tears this time. "If I lose you again, I don't think I'll ever be lucky enough to find you in the next life." Chapter 07. When I woke up in the hospital, my parents were already sitting by my bedside. I'd only suffered some scrapes and cuts from broken glass, nothing too serious. Everything had already been cleaned and bandaged. But after such a terrifying ordeal, seeing my parents, who had long passed away in my last life, standing there, real and alive, the moment I saw them, my nose tingled, and tears spilled out. They comforted me softly. "You're okay now, son." Then I suddenly thought of Willow. My voice was hoarse as I asked, "Where's Willow?" My parents exchanged confused glances. "Who's Willow?" That's when I realized, of course, they didn't know her yet. Not in this timeline. I immediately tried to get out of bed in a panic. "I need to find the nurse." My mom hurried to stop me. "Where are you going, son?" "That girl who came back with me, she saved me," I said urgently. Eventually, I learned from the nurse that Willow had been placed in another single patient room, 5 doors down from mine. Since my injuries were minor, My parents didn't stop me from going. They followed behind, keeping a watchful eye. When I arrived outside her room, the nurse had just stepped out after switching her for. I looked through the doorway and saw her father sitting inside. I walked in and blurted out instinctively, "Dad." Mr. Liu looked completely stunned. So did my parents, and I was mortified. Almost as soon as the word left my mouth, I realized what I'd done. I quickly tried to cover it up. "Sorry, Uncle. I'm Willow's classmate, George. I came to check on her." Mr. Liu glanced at the hospital gown I was wearing. Then his face lit up with understanding. "You were also on that bus with Willow?" I nodded. Since Willow had saved me from the worst of the injuries, my parents quickly began chatting with hers, expressing their gratitude. Meanwhile, I stayed quietly by Willow's side. She was badly hurt, struck multiple times by falling luggage. Besides scrapes and bruises, she had a head injury and 2 broken ribs. She hadn't regained consciousness since being admitted. It wasn't until the early morning of the 3rd day that she finally stirred. Her father had gone home to rest, and the nurse on night duty had dozed off in the corner. I couldn't sleep, so I snuck quietly into her room again. Before long, I saw her eyelids flutter open. The lights in the room were off, but the glow of the streetlights outside filtered in through the window, casting a soft glow. Willow stared at me for a few seconds, then smiled, gentle warmth spilling from her eyes. I let go of the hand I'd been holding and stood up to pour her a cup of warm water. I helped her sip it slowly, and asked, "How are you feeling?" She shook her head, as if to say she was okay, but kept smiling, her eyes never leaving mine. I frowned slightly. "Why are you smiling like that?" Her lips curved faintly, voice hoarse but filled with unmistakable joy. "There's nothing more comforting than waking up and finding you right beside me." It was the first time I'd ever heard Willow say what she truly felt. She blinked slowly and continued, "When you passed away, it felt like the whole world went quiet. So quiet I could barely hear anything." I paused, because that was a part of the story I never got to see. "Her life after my death," she whispered. "Life stopped meaning much. I just sat around all day, staring at the things you left behind. Have you ever heard of Yuan Yangming? It's said that when one spouse in a destined pair dies, the other won't live long after." She hooked her finger around mine and let out a soft laugh. "George, I think I'm like that too. My health was fine, but 2 months after you were gone, I lay down on your side of the bed, and just followed you." I sniffed, vision blurring with the image of old Willow, alone, grieving, fading away quietly in the dark. I turned my head away. "Then why didn't you come see me one last time?" She gave a faint, bitter smile. "I kept thinking, if I didn't see you, maybe you'd be too angry to die peacefully. That maybe, you'd fight a little harder to stay. But, you still left me." I sighed, helpless. "That wasn't exactly my decision. You know, what was I supposed to do, argue with the Grim Reaper?" She continued, "The moment I realized I'd been sent back to when I was 20, I couldn't wait to find you. But when I saw you the next day, in the cafeteria, and in class, you had no reaction at all. I thought maybe, you hadn't come back too. But little things started making me doubt. The way you tied your shoes, carried that thermos, looked at certain people. I started wondering if maybe, you were just pretending not to recognize me. I wasn't planning to confront you that soon, but that day, when I saw you laughing and chatting with someone else like I was a stranger, my chest felt so tight I could hardly breathe. I just needed to break your act. I needed to know we still had a connection. But that day, I told her we shouldn't be in each other's lives at all." She took a shaky breath. "When I realized you really didn't want me in your life this time, I did think about leaving you alone, doing what you asked. But she hesitated. "I guess I'm not as good at pretending not to care anymore. On Christmas night, I finally figured it out. If I can't let you go, then I'll just have to hold on tighter." I hadn't said anything for a while. She gently shook my hand. "I've said so much. Aren't you going to say something?" Chapter 08. What kind of reaction was I supposed to give? I said, "Drink more hot water." Willow's eyes went wide with disbelief. "That's it." I scratched my head, a little sheepish. "This is all kind of, a lot. I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything." She let out a long sigh. "George, I never wanted to deal with love or catch feelings for anyone. You know, my parents divorced when I was really young. I saw what it looked like when they were in love, and I saw what it turned into once the love was gone: resentment, bitterness. I learned early on that human emotions are fickle. You can't control when someone falls for you, and you definitely can't control when they stop. That's why I always avoided relationships. It just seemed safer that way. Business marriages were perfect, no emotions involved. But then I met you, and honestly, it felt nice. You hated me, or at least acted like you did, so I felt no pressure around you. I could be completely myself, vent, lash out, whatever, without fear of emotional consequences. We had children, just like you. Then they grew up, built lives of their own, started families of their own. I truly thought I'd lived a smooth, satisfying life. Everything unfolded exactly the way I wanted. Except, she paused for a few seconds, then continued quietly, I never imagined you'd be the one to leave first. Having you by my side became as natural as breathing. We argued every day, but never once did I think about being apart from you. I admit I never really learned how to love someone properly. But now that we've come back, I want to try. I want to learn. Can I? After she finished, Willow fell silent, her eyes fixed on me. I knew she was waiting for my answer. It took a long moment, but eventually, I opened my mouth and said, that day, you said I only liked you for 4 years. But that's not true, Willow, I said with a quiet smile. I loved you for most of my life. I knew how much love scared you. I knew that if I acted on my feelings too directly, it would only push you further away. Every little moment of concern I accidentally let slip made you recoil like I was threatening your personal space. So I figured, pretending not to love you might actually make you feel safer. The truth was, we were the same. I hid my care for her beneath years of feigned irritation. She hid her tenderness behind years of deliberate coldness. Looking back, I think we actually had a pretty good life. Other people only ever saw her as talented but emotionally distant. But I had seen so much more, her full range of emotions, her warmth, her vulnerability. That was the real Willow. Maybe I never fully broke into her heart, but no one else ever came between us either. She still had my children, still built a home with me, and I stayed by her side until the end. She said, the reason I said we shouldn't be involved this time around was because I thought I had disappointed you. I thought, maybe without me, you'd meet someone more suitable, someone who could change how you feel about love and make you truly happy. But George, she said gently, you already changed me. It happened slowly. Over all those years we spent together. I couldn't help but laugh softly when I heard that. I didn't argue anymore. I said, all right, a lifetime, sometimes it feels long, sometimes short. And just like that, I'd spent it all acting out a love story with Willow. I grew up surrounded by love. I knew love meant giving, understanding, staying. Willow, on the other hand, grew up lacking it, and never really learned how to give it back. But now that I look back, I'm not so sure her love ever ran shallower than mine. Maybe I was just the one who felt it first, and she realized it later. I asked, what would you have done if I hadn't come back this time? Willow answered instantly, then I'd chase after you. I frowned. You were 78. She sniffed indignantly. That's a mindset. Okay, call it mature and composed. Physically I was 20. We'd be a perfect match, wouldn't we? I thought back to all the savage things she said to me that day at the park. I had no words. Double standards. Yeah, she invented the game. Oh, by the way, I suddenly remembered something and looked a little awkward. When I first came to your hospital room, I saw your dad, and I accidentally called him Dad. My parents were with me too. Pretty sure they misunderstood. Willow burst out laughing. She laughed so hard her chest started to ache again, and she had to hold it with one hand before she could finally catch her breath. Beaming, she looked at me and said, is it still a misunderstanding now? I paused for a moment, then leaned in and kissed her forehead. I said softly, no, not anymore. Chapter 09. Winter break only lasted a month, but even after returning to campus, Willow had to spend another 3 months resting before she was fully recovered. When my dorm mates saw us walking hand in hand, they couldn't help but tease. Man, after all that effort explaining yourself, what was the point? Reality speaks for itself. Fair enough. I gave up trying to argue. They weren't wrong. 2 years later, when we were seniors taking our graduation photos, we'd already taken tons of pictures together, but Willow still dragged me to the exact same spot where I'd once secretly snapped a photo of her. She made me take another shot, this time of her smiling right at the camera. Then she forced me to write the same words I'd written years ago on the back of the Polaroid. Even a spring breeze that stretches for miles doesn't compare to you. It felt like reaching across time and space, pulling that silent, one-sided love from years ago into the present, and finally, giving it the acknowledgement it never had. After graduation photos, we both started our internships. Thanks to decades of experience from our previous lives, Willow and I were each entrusted with major responsibilities as soon as we returned to our respective family companies. Like I said before, early mornings will always find a way to exist in this world. Our companies both officially started work at 9:30, but our parents had agreed we had to clock in by 8 a.m. A pair of doomed lovers, truly. On the morning of Willow's 22nd birthday, the weather was perfect. Both of us snuck out during work hours to head to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get our marriage license. Honestly, I didn't think Willow would be in such a hurry, but I couldn't hold out against her persistence and sweet talk. Within a couple of days, I'd surrendered. Right before we walked in, I muttered to myself, in our last life, we got married before we even dated. This life, we dated once, and still ended up married. Same person both times. Kind of monotonous, don't you think? That night, Willow put on a variety of battle outfits and absolutely wrung me dry. Afterward, she leaned in and asked with a smirk, still think it's monotonous? Definitely not. It was great. Simple love makes happiness simple. When we walked out of the marriage office, we each held a little red book in our hands. Willow insisted on keeping both certificates, treating them like treasure and tucking them safely into the inner pocket of her coat. While we were stopped at a red light, she turned to me and asked, "Do you remember what you said before, about how since we started over, we could make different choices from last time?" I gave her a lazy glance and said, "What? Regretting that we made the same choice again?" "Nope," she replied. Then, while I was distracted, she leaned in and stole a kiss. "I was just thinking, last time, we had 2 kids. This time, we got married 4 years earlier. How about one more?" I stared at her, dumbfounded. What kind of mental gymnastics is that? Willow grinned. "Come on, look at our genes, too good to waste, right?" I had no comeback. She added seriously, "As model citizens, we should actively support the National Birth Rate Initiative." I shrugged. "Sure, let's do it. It's not like we can't afford it." Willow formed a heart with her hands and said, "Love you." I kept my eyes on the road ahead, but I couldn't stop the smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "Yeah, love you too, from the past, to the present, and into the future."